and Veronica's father was a lawyer who worked with many companies. He was a thin, trustworthy man who often looked worried. He was 53 years old, clean-shaven, with a serious mouth and a sharp nose. His hair was gray, and he wore gold-framed glasses. He also had a small bald spot on the top of his head. His name was Peter. Peter had 5 children, and Veronica was the youngest. Because of this, he sometimes seemed tired and did not pay her much attention. He called her his little V and would pat her on the head in a way that surprised her. He treated her as if she was any age between 11 and 28. Peter was often stressed because of his work in the city. The rest of his energy was spent playing golf, a game he took very seriously, or working with rocks and microscopes. Microscopes were his hobby. When he was 18, he received a microscope as a birthday present, and he became very interested in using it. He became friends with a man who sold microscopes, and this helped him learn more. Peter was very good with his hands and liked doing small, detailed work. He became one of the best amateur rock collectors in the world. He spent more money and time than he should have working in a small room at the top of the house. There, he made tools to help him look at rocks through the microscope and spent hours polishing rocks until they were thin and clear. He said he did this to clear his mind. He showed his best work at a group for people who liked microscopes. People admired his skill, but the rocks he chose were more difficult to work with than they were useful for science. He didn't like the work of people who used rocks to prove scientific ideas. He thought their work was sloppy, and the world didn't respect the hard work he did. Peter didn't read much, but he liked light books with colorful titles like The Red Sword, The Black Helmet, or The Purple Robe. He read them in the evenings after dinner to clear his mind. And Veronica noticed that when he read, he liked to take the best lamp in the room and put his old slippers in front of the fire. She sometimes wondered why he needed so much to relax his mind. His favorite newspaper was The Times, which he read every morning at breakfast, often getting annoyed with it. He took the newspaper with him on the train to finish reading it, and there was never another paper at home. And Veronica sometimes remembered how he was when she was younger. Over time, her memories became unclear, but she knew that, when she was a little girl, her father sometimes wore white tennis clothes and rode a bicycle smoothly through the gates to the front door. Back then, he also helped her mother with gardening and stood nearby when her mother climbed a ladder to attach plants to the wall. As the youngest child, and Veronica lived in a home that became quieter as she grew older. Her mother died when she was 13, and her 2 much older sisters got married, one quietly and one with some trouble. Her 2 brothers had left home long before her, so she tried to get close to her father. But he wasn't the type of father one could get close to. Her father had old-fashioned ideas about girls and women. He thought they were either too bad to even talk about, or too good and pure for the real world. To him, women were fragile and needed to be treated in one of 2 ways, either with respect or looked down upon. He didn't believe women could be anything in between. He kept these 2 views separate in his mind. He thought women were like delicate clay pots, either made for worship or to be broken. He had never really wanted daughters. Each time one of his daughters was born, he would hide his disappointment from his wife by being extra kind to her. But in private, he would curse in frustration. He considered himself a very manly man, and he had loved his lively little wife with real passion. However, he had always felt that their children came too quickly, as if they were an intrusion on their lives together. Still, he made big plans for his two sons. One of them worked in the Indian Civil Service, and the other was in the fast-growing motor business. He had expected that the daughters would be taken care of by their mother. He didn't know much about raising daughters. They just happened to men in his view. A little daughter can be a delightful thing. She runs around happily, she plays, she's bright and pretty. She has lots of soft hair, and she shows more love than her brothers. She is a lovely little companion for her mother, doing things in the same way her mother does. She says funny things that you can talk about at work, and they are so good that they could even be printed in a comic magazine like Punch. You give her cute nicknames like Babs, Bibs, Vittles, and V. You playfully pretend to hit her, and she hits you back. She loves to sit on your lap. All of this is fun and how things should be. But a little daughter and a grown daughter are very different. Mr. Stanley and Veronica's father had never thought much about what happens when little daughters grow up. When he did start thinking about it, it made him so uncomfortable that he quickly tried to distract himself. The light fiction books he read never really helped him with this issue. The heroes in those books didn't have daughters. They always borrowed other people's children. He believed that his daughters were his property. They had to obey him, and it was his choice whether to let them leave home or keep them around to comfort him in his old age. He liked to think about this ownership in a nice way, but at the end of the day, he still thought of it as ownership. He believed it was fair because he had spent time and money raising them. Daughters, he thought, were not like sons. Still, the novels he read and the world around him did not agree with his old-fashioned ideas. But nothing replaced those ideas, so they stayed quietly in his mind. His daughters were supposed to be obedient, but somehow they also had some independence, which confused him. One of his daughters married as he wished, and the other married against his wishes. Now, and Veronica, his little V, was unhappy with her beautiful, safe, and protective home. She was hanging out with friends who didn't wear hats, going to socialist meetings and art class dances, and she wanted to become a scientist, which he thought was not a job for a woman. She seemed to think that he was just there to give her money so she could be free. Now, she insisted on leaving the safe Treadgold Women's College and wanted to join Russell's classes, which he thought were too wild. She even wanted to go to costume parties dressed as a pirate and spend the night with her friend Widget's unruly group of girls in a strange hotel in Soho. Her father had tried not to think about her behavior, but the situation and the pressure from his sister had become too much. He finally put down the book The Lilac Sunbonnet, went to his study, lit the gas fire, and wrote the letter that brought their problems to a head. "My dear V," he wrote, "these daughters." He chewed on his pen and thought for a moment, then tore up the paper and started again. "My dear Veronica, your aunt has told me that you have made plans with the Widget girls to attend a fancy dress ball in London. It seems you want to go dressed in some unusual costume. wrapped in your opera cloak, and after the party, you plan to stay with your friends at a hotel without any adults. Now, I don't like to stop you from doing something you really want, but I'm afraid. He thought, then crossed out the last part of the sentence. But this cannot happen. No, he said to himself and tried again, but I must tell you very clearly that I feel it's my duty to stop you from doing something like this. Damn, he muttered, looking at the messy letter. He grabbed a new sheet of paper and rewrote what he had written. He was starting to get a little irritated as he wrote. I'm sorry that you ever thought of such a plan, he continued. He thought for a moment and then started a new paragraph. The truth is, and this silly idea of yours only proves it, you've begun to believe some strange things about what a young lady like you can and cannot do. I don't think you fully understand my values or what is right and proper between a father and his daughter. Your attitude toward me. He paused, lost in thought. It was hard to say exactly what he meant. And toward your aunt. For a while, he searched for the right words. Then he continued. And, in fact, toward many of the important things in life is, frankly, not acceptable. You are restless, always arguing, and you criticize everything without really thinking. You don't understand the important things in life, and I hope you never have to, and in your careless ignorance, you are ready to jump into situations that could lead to regret for the rest of your life. A young girl's life is full of dangers lurking around every corner. He paused for a moment, imagining Veronica reading this sentence. But now he was too emotional to notice the mixed-up way he had described it. Well, he said to himself, it is true. That's all there is to it. She needs to know. The life of a young girl is full of dangers, and she must be protected at all costs. His lips tightened, and he frowned with firm determination. So long as I am your father, and as long as your life is in my care, I feel that I must use my authority to stop this strange desire of yours for wild adventures. One day, you will thank me for this. It's not that I think you are bad, because you're not. But a girl can be hurt not only by doing wrong, but by being close to wrong. Even a reputation for being reckless can cause as much harm as really doing something wrong. So, please believe that I am doing what is best for you in this matter. He signed his name and thought for a moment. Then he opened the study door and called Molly. He stood in a position of authority in front of the gas fire, with its blue flames and orange glow. His sister, Molly, appeared. She was wearing a dress that was complicated with lace, patterns, and different colors like black, purple, and cream. In many ways, she was like a younger, female version of her brother. She had the same sharp nose, which only and Veronica, out of the family, didn't have. Molly carried herself well, unlike her brother who often slouched. There was something elegant and dignified about her, which she had gained during her long engagement to a curate from a respectable family, the Wiltshire Edmondshaws. Unfortunately, he had died before they could marry. When her brother's wife passed away, she came to help him and took on much of the care of his youngest daughter and Veronica. But her old-fashioned views often clashed with the more modern and casual atmosphere of the home. From the beginning, she had wanted to be a second mother to Veronica, a better one. But there were many things about her that and Veronica did not understand. Now she entered the room with a calm and caring expression. Mr. Stanley pointed to the letter with the pipe he had taken from his jacket. "What do you think of that?" he asked. She took the letter in her hands, which were covered in rings, and read it carefully. He filled his pipe slowly as she read. "Yes," she said at last, "it's firm but caring. I could have said more. You've said just what needed to be said. It's exactly what's required. She really must not go to that event." She paused, and he waited for her to continue. "I don't think she quite understands the harm those people could cause or the kind of life they might lead her into," she said. "They would ruin every opportunity." "She has opportunities?" he asked, helping her finish her thought. "She's a very attractive girl," she said, and added, "to some people. Of course, one doesn't talk about these things until there's something to talk about. That's why she shouldn't do anything that would cause people to gossip." "That's exactly how I feel." Mr. Stanley stood quietly for a while, holding the letter in his hand. "I'd give anything," he said, "to see our little V happily and comfortably married." The next morning, he handed the letter to the maid in a casual way as he was leaving for the train to London. When Veronica got the letter, at first, she had a wild idea that it might contain money or a tip.